This is our CDC update and COVID Roundup for February 16th, 2024. Since last week, we are up about 1% in new hospital admissions due to COVID, and since last week, we are down about 7% in deaths due to COVID. Putting this into perspective, we had 9 weeks where we were sharply increasing in COVID hospitalizations, 4 weeks of decreases, and now 1 week of a mild increase. For our COVID death trends, 20 of the last 28 weeks have had COVID death increases, where 5 of those weeks were holding constant and 3 of those weeks were going down. And we are now in our second week of COVID death decreases. For the COVID variants in circulation right now, JN1 is making up the majority, making up 96.4% of all COVID variants in circulation right now that are being tested, which is pretty wild. The last wave we had that was similar to this was the XBB 1.5 wave. However, of note, there are about 6 subvariants of JN1 currently in circulation that are not listed yet in the CDC lineage tracker. And for our COVID imports, it's really just the JN1, the BA2.86, and then the BA2. Now, back to those JN1 subvariants that I talked about. So JN1 is only making up about 48% of all variants in circulation right now, where JN 1.4 is making up about 27%, JN 1.1, 4.8%, JN 1.7, 2.9%, JN 1.8.1, 2.6%, JN 1.9, 1.3%, and JN 1.2, 1.3%. Which is very important because you might be thinking, oh, JN1 is just one variant, we don't have to worry about that. Well, no, it's actually created many subvariants that are making up a pretty significant portion of the population of the many variants out there. So limited immunity that would have been conferred by JN1 might not protect you from any of these other subvariants of JN1. So it's important to recognize that this is the data behind the data. Next, while that 1% may seem like a small change in new hospital admissions due to COVID, we're seeing that our map is sort of exploding with orange, where this is peppered all across the country. And as a reminder, anything that is orange is going to be increasing COVID hospitalizations. Anything that is yellow is going to be holding stable. This could be stable at high levels or low levels. You have to look at prior maps to know. And anything that is green or teal is going to be decreasing levels of COVID. Now let's toggle between this week's, last week's map, and the week prior to that. So this is last week's map, the week prior to that, and again, this week's map, where it seems to me that the major difference is sort of in the center of the country, where 2 weeks ago was low. Last week we had some areas that were kind of turning orange, and this week there are many areas that are exploding to orange. So if we focus on the West, mainly California, for the past 3 weeks, we see some high levels in the north, and then some high levels starting to occur in the center of the state, where the center of the state is growing in cases, but lowering in the north, to the present week, where we have even higher levels in the center of the state and increasing levels once more in the north, where the East Coast sort of had high levels maintained about 2 weeks ago, where last week it was holding steady, decreasing in some areas, and then they're either seeing these maintain or generally increase in the east as well. Moving on to our COVID wastewater, we have some weird things happening in New York. So first, as a reminder, anything that is blue is low levels of COVID, anything that is light blue is moderate, and anything from yellow to bright red is high levels of COVID. And this is COVID in the wastewater, where this is where you have to understand the full picture of the data itself, because when you look at this number 13 at the top and you see that it's weighted sort of downwards towards the bottom of this high region, you think, oh, COVID levels are decreasing in New York. But that's why I report on a percentage of reporting counties or reporting wastewater facilities, because we see down here that 58 wastewater facilities are not currently reporting data, which is why I look at the percentage of reporting wastewater facilities. So if we add up all these numbers right here at the high level of COVID wastewater, we get 136 wastewater facilities at this high level, and then we subtract the 205 wastewater facilities minus the 58 that aren't reporting. That gives us 147, so 136 over 147, about 93% of reporting wastewater facilities are at the highest levels, where last week it was at 95%, so we're down about 2% in severity, showing that the wastewater facilities are still at very high levels in New York. But what's even more concerning is that these wastewater facilities here have not reported data for at least 4 weeks. and the number has dramatically grown over the past week and a half for ones not reporting. So, what I'm concerned about is perhaps there is not funding for these wastewater facilities to continue doing their COVID surveillance efforts. So, if there's a news reporter out there, please look into this because this is a concerning data trend to me. Moving on to wastewater scan, this is our 58 reporting wastewater facilities in California, where the bulk majority seems to be holding at pretty high levels, with some going up quite high. So the overall trend is still that we're probably going upwards, or that we're maintaining at these high levels. It's kind of unclear at this point. But what's very interesting to me is this area down here, the fact that we have not touched back down, which is showing us a maintained level of COVID within the communities, where this initial liftoff started around the middle of November and has continued since, showing that there's a widespread persistent level of COVID within the monitored communities here. And then looking to all reporting wastewater facilities to wastewater scan across the US, we're still seeing signs of this second bump that we were expecting. So I would expect us to finish this bump based off of last year around the end of February, and then we should be tailing back down until June, which was when the summer wave would start again. But that's provided we don't have a brand new variant that comes in and just picks up steam. And I mean like a major variant. So one of the ones we're watching right now is BA 2.87.1. It was first identified in South Africa, and then was also picked up in Italy. This is another wide mutation variant, which has been described as the most mutated variant to date. So if that one picks up steam or has a certain point mutation that allows it to become even more transmissible, we could potentially see another resurgence in the near future. But based off of current trends, we would expect that after the end of February, we'd start to be tapering down until we'd be picking back up again in June. So ideally, we are almost through this little hump. And that's our roundup for this week.